is proud to present the powerhouse, the storyteller, the voice that commands the room. Gina! Hey Gina! Hey Gina! Hey Gina! Iconic, unstoppable, queen of the earth. Hey Gina! Hey Gina! Hey Gina! Speaking her truth, can't nobody come between us. She's the CEO's voice, make your message ignite. Takes your story to the stage, turns your words into light. From boardrooms to TEDx, she's raising the bar. Gina Ballard, powerhouse superstar. Beats drop harder, chants louder. Dang Gina, dang Gina, dang Gina. She's got the wisdom, the fire, the demeanor. Dang Gina, dang Gina, dang Gina. When she steps on the mic, ain't nobody meaner. What, Gina? What, Gina?
Yeah, red chef. She the voice in the storm, the calm in the fight. Dropping jewels on the mic, make the message ignite. Global stage queen, she don't need no rehearsal. Flipping facts in the fight, you're making stories universal. Step aside, let her shine, yeah, the moment is hers. From the crowd to the boardroom, she commands the word. What?
Dang Gina, dang Gina, storyteller, legend, believer, dream weaver. Dang Gina, dang Gina, dang Gina.
ULIEV tonight, she's the leader. UTG, come on. Dang Gina, dang Gina,
Dang Gina, storyteller, legend, believer, dream weaver. Dang Gina, dang Gina, dang Gina.
ULIEV tonight, she's the leader. Now that's the funniest thing in the world. And everyone's going to say, why is that so funny, Bill? And I'm going to tell you. I made a decision to take all the comments off of my screen so that I can concentrate on my guest more. So right now, my entire screen is full. So normally I can see the StreamYard backing. And I'm looking at my television in the living room. So my TV's over there. So whenever you guys see me glancing over, it's because YouTube's there, LinkedIn's here. So when I made the screen wide, I forgot to put myself on the stage. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out why I'm not seeing myself and when this thing is gonna go. So I apologize for being late. We made a scheduling change because in America, we rolled our clocks back or forward, I forget. And our guest today is from Australia or New Zealand. She'll tell me in a second, so I'm not going to get it right. So there we go. And so it's like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning there. But she's so phenomenal. I mean, well, let's do this right. Hey, everybody, this is William Rochelle, and welcome to UBU Live. Today is a continuation of a conversation that started a few weeks ago. If you were here for that episode, you remember Gina. You remember her presence. You remember how she shows up. With that mix of warmth and razor sharp insight that somehow make you feel both seen and challenged in all the right ways. And don't ever tell her she's a liar.
because she is brutally honest. And after that episode, I talked to Gina and said, hey, let's do a coaching session. So original was, who are you going to call Ghostbusters? And I'll let you know how life works. I called Ghostbusters. I occasionally am a little bit hard on myself, and I did a show as a guest, and in my head, I felt like I could have done better. And in talking to Gina, and we'll talk about how we worked through all of that, but I saw the conversation in a totally different way, and I understood more about my presence and my body language. And before we bring her in, I want to say that this out loud, because transparency matters to me, and I know it matters to you. When you work with someone who actually knows what they're doing, you can feel it. Yes, you can feel it in the questions they ask. You can feel it in the silence they allow. Pause. You can feel it in the way your own mind opens and starts telling the truth you've been avoiding. And that's what's happened since we worked together. This wasn't a generic Facebook. This wasn't some surface level. This wasn't the kind of advice you forget by the time you get home. It was intentional. It was pointed. It was rooted in understanding, not assumption. And because of that, it stuck with me. And to me, that's the most important. So, without further ado, I would like all of you to welcome Gina Bellarin.
Greetings, everyone, from down south, literally the opposite side of the world from you. So, yes, it's Australia, Bill.
Yes.
And it is 8 a.m., so it's a respectable time of morning here.
It-
And I have to say, I completely agree with Kenneth. You do look suave, debonair, sophisticated, stellar, scholarly, distinguished, dapper, intelligent, gorgeously handsome, and impeccably well dressed today. But I think Kenneth swallowed a thesaurus.
First of all, let me tell you something. Like how God works, right? So I didn't see that. So when I clicked on it, while I was doing something else, and then that's a real great quote to come home to, right?
Yeah, now I can't wait to see what Kenneth has to say about me. Do I look suave, debonair, sophisticated? Isn't it funny how language works, that you associate certain words with certain genders? So I don't know that anyone would call me suave necessarily.
See, I no
But
longer gender associate words, clothing, colors.
well, you're an evolved species. I think, I think historically language has kind of connections with
Absolutely.
genders. They have, definitely, and it's tricky because how do you own it? I'd love to be called suave.
I would love not to see this trash in the back of the screen.
You can also zoom in, Bill. I think that might solve the problem.
That's how you fix that. All right. So,
All right,
ladies and gentlemen,
we're live.
we are on.
live. Like what you see is what you get. Hey,
there you go. How have you been?
not bad at all. Since we last spoke, I had an ankle injury that is recovering nicely. But isn't it funny when one part of you that you're just so used to using all the time is damaged, that the rest of you suffers, and you don't realize, especially with ankles, how important they are. And I can tell you, I certainly appreciate my ankle than I ever have before.
And how did you hurt your ankle?
Must we tell people that I jumped out of a tractor?
That's the best way. See, to me, the fact that you hurt your ankle isn't the story. The story is now, at certain points in our lives, we stop being as athletic. So I wasn't thinking that you were in a football game. So I knew. Why did you jump out of a tractor?
because it was sliding down the hill and I happened to be perched on the side of the tractor as hubby was driving it so that we could get from point A to point B with me on the tractor. And then there was a steep slope and a ditch. And so I'm sitting on the side precariously hanging on for dear life. And hubby says, "Get off." And there's that tone of voice that partners have when you just know you don't mess with them. Like
Yes.
normally I will be like, "Why? Is that a good idea?" I don't know. This time I'm like, "Get off, get off." Unfortunately, my left leg got off and it sailed seamlessly across the little ditch, and my right leg didn't obey the instructions.
And
And the right leg landed straight in the ditch and drop and roll. And I'm doing like combat rolls here on the ground to defend myself from this tractor that's slipping down the hill and slithering onto its side. And, because if you're going to injure an ankle, injure an ankle. But if you're going to be crushed by a tractor, you got some serious issues here.
yeah.
So yes, jumped off the tractor, landed in the ditch. Thank goodness I was wearing those big black boots, like safety boots, and you get them in Australia. They got steel capped toes. Well, they don't have
So the-
steel capped ankles, but at least they did prevent me from doing any further injury other than twisting my ankle, which is a great relief. So now you know all sorts of information about me. I wear steel toe capped boots. I own a tractor, and you know that I listen to my husband when
and
situations are
and I know that you are honest and a great person to connect with. And here's the thing, and this is very interesting. I like to work with friends. I do. It makes it feel better, and sometimes I might use those words loosely. Um, there's business friends, there's professional friends, there's networking friends, and when I got on with you, and you and I first started, and you remember that whole thing, there was a calming effect that you had with me, and when we started talking about whether or not I wanted to do it,
by it he means coaching, to be clear.
yes. um, you didn't. I almost had to force you. I was like, "Yes, come on." It was a very interesting conversation. But what I appreciated about it is you asked me where I was mentally before we even started the conversation. And you asked me if I was ready for brutal honesty. And I said, yeah, okay. And I asked you to record it, and then you said, well, do you really want to record this? And I don't think we used the recording, but it's there, I think. But the experience was so soothing and cathartic at the same time, revelatory. Is that a word?
That is totally a word. It's a gorgeous word. Thanks, Bill. Soothing,
Um,
cathartic, and revelatory. I'll say that. Yeah.
that's what it was. So let's go to you. What did you see before our conversation? So I came to you frantic. Go ahead.
First of all, I saw a lot of vulnerability, which is risky. And I'll talk to the audience. I don't know where you are in your lives. You might be a professional, you might have been doing whatever you do for years. But when you get to a more senior level in your career, you start to learn that while you want to be honest about everything, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to be brutally honest about everything, because there are consequences to sharing information. The more senior you are in a company, the more serious the consequences are of sharing that information. And so when Bill shared with our group that he was struggling, I said, I can help you, Bill. And the reason I knew I could help him is because he'd been brave enough to say, I need help. And this is honestly the magic moment for all coaches. We can theoretically help everyone, theoretically, but you have to be in the right frame of mind that you're actually willing to be helped. And that's what I saw before we even had our first conversation about whether we were right for each other. And then through that, I kept seeing Bill's big heart. And I think anyone who's watched any of the stuff knows that he has a big heart and he wears his big heart on his sleeve. But it's one
Aw.
thing to have a big heart, and it's another thing to be willing to put that heart on the line. And during our conversations, it became clear to me that there is a lot more to Bill than meets the eye. And we'll full disclosure here, Bill is doing this amazing show, and he's got hundreds, if not thousands, of listeners and tens of thousands of people who follow him. But what happens behind the scenes is that Bill is looking to get a great job. So people who are listening in here, Bill has been second in command of organizations. He has been chief operating officer. What Bill doesn't know about turning around an organization that's struggling isn't worth knowing. Would you guess that from this charming and engaging, and sorry, I'm just going to refer to the dictionary thesaurus that we saw earlier, debonair, suave, yes, maybe you would if you've been following him for a while. But the question is, how does the rest of the world see him when they're not following his guests? And so your original question was, what did I see before we started working together? That's what I saw. But then in the last minute, Bill was like, oh, I almost had to convince Gina to take the session. Well, we'd been talking for a while, and I have a perspective that timing is everything. And we caught up at one point in time, and you didn't seem right. Something was off. And I thought, wait, hang on, Bill, if you're not okay, if now is not the right time to start, then I want to make sure that you get value out of the time that we spend together. And if it's not the right time for you now, let's press pause. We can come back to this. And that's what I saw.
That is beautiful. That is also insightful, because I think that at the guys, it's okay to be not okay. And I think a lot of times what you're doing is you're holding things together. And there's some times where I just need to take a break. And the problem with that is that people will say, but you're on a break. So people don't get that when you don't have a place to go every single morning, if you don't have something to do, to look forward to,
Mm-hmm.
it could have a negative impact. And in that moment, I think that I was struggling with happiness. I think so. We'll discuss this, but I think during that period, I may have considered whether or not I was an alcoholic.
Wow, that's big.
Yeah. So and I'm going to say that for the first time on air. Didn't tell this to Gina, because it is amazing what you don't recognize about yourself. So I'm going to give you guys something that's very true. So I haven't had a drink in 50 days. I haven't had a drink in 60 days. I haven't had a drink in 90 days. I don't drink. But if you are close to me, people will say he doesn't drink. But once he opens the bottle, so I can drink from a Friday to a Monday if I have no place to go.
Bill, that means that you are actually what they call a functioning alcoholic. And it's more common than you think. There are many, many people who consider they are not alcoholics because they don't drink periodically. They don't drink all the time. But it shows that there is a dependency on. I mean, I'm not a diagnostician. I can't say this for sure. But if you identify that in yourself, and if that is the situation, then that is how the alcoholics world actually calls. There's a name for this thing. That you can function until you don't, because it's that dependency on alcohol. It's that can't stopness that is the sign.
So I want everyone to be very, very clear with this, because I am looking for a job. There is no shame in understanding and admitting who you are.
Yes.
In fact, that's how you take back your power.
Yeah.
I just let me sit here for a second, right? So if anyone knows me, it takes me a minute to warm up, right? So I'm not going to say I'm an alcoholic. I'm saying, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair. And to be
you know,
fair, the process of discovery takes a long time. There's a reason there's a 12-step program. It
yeah.
doesn't happen overnight.
So I do believe that I do believe we had a 3-week period, and one of those weekends was one of the weekends that I didn't do a show. If I hadn't been on for like a week, and when I came back, which is very, very interesting, I was unfunctional, meaning, meaning, hold on, that I could function and I can walk and talk, but while I was talking to you, I had to think, because I was in a fog. I was in a
Mm,
fog. And so
mm,
I think
mm.
what you were witnessing was a self-discovery
Wow.
as I was coming out of it, because I'm talking to you and I'm like, yes. And when I realized that I was really good is when I think I yoked up on you. I'm like, do I have to force you? And you were like, no, well, let's go. Because I was coming, I was ready. I was
Yeah.
ready. So, um, and how I deal with it, I don't know because I just figured it out. Um,
Well, if I can interject, I'm not an expert in this subject, but I know people who've gone through this and people
mhm,
who've been affected by it. And I want to call out the power of not necessarily Alcoholics Anonymous, but Al Anon, which is actually a support group for people who are friends and family members of alcoholics.
yeah,
And I know from personal experience of someone who went through Al Anon that they found just the very nature of not being alone transformational
yeah,
for them. And if I can reflect on how I've seen them progress and evolve through, honestly, self love and acceptance and just knowing that it's okay to be themselves, that was the kind of best therapy that they ever could have gone through. And if that's what they get as a member of Al Anon, I wouldn't be surprised if AA is a similar kind of experience. But again, like all of these groups, I can reflect on this as a Toastmasters thing, right? For anyone who doesn't know Toastmasters, it's a club where people get together and do public speaking exercises. And it's very, very formulaic because they do very specific things. You have a speech for this long, and then you have a rebuttal for this long, and then you have another person talking for this, and then you've got these 3 exercises for impromptu speaking, and then this person talking for a long period of time. It's specifically designed to help you figure out how you're speaking, how to do impromptu speaking, how to take a topic and work around it, how to stick to time, and then how to create a showcase, which is, your big speech. But the reason I liken these two groups to each other is that you'll get the same basics for a group anywhere in the world, and then you get different flavors. And often where you are, just on one side of the hill or the other, one side of the railway tracks or the other, you can get a completely different vibe from the place that you go. So I might go to a Toastmasters group down the road. And full disclosure, I'm not a Toastmasters member. I was for a year or so, I think, in university, like long time ago. But I was invited to speak at a Toastmasters event not too far away from me. And it was amazing. And I loved every second of it. But the people there were fantastic. They were supportive, they were engaging, they worked together well as a team. But I don't know what would happen if that was, in a different location. It might have a very different vibe. So that's wow. Back to you, Bill. Sorry for the segue into professional speaking, but hey, that's what I do. So.
no, this is if anything, this is a conversation. This is someone said, why did you start UVU? It's a place where people could be honest and we can share and we can agree to disagree because
Yeah.
we come from totally different communities. Actually, before we came on, Gina and I agreed to disagree, and then I bet her, and then she refused to take me up on my bet. And
It's
then
only
she
because I actually think you're partly right and I don't want to lose.
what did I? Oh, you complimented me. You complimented me something. I'm like, you're lying, and you're like, don't you ever call me a liar. I think I said that in the
Well, yeah, it was
beginning.
worse than that. You didn't say you are lying. You said you are a liar. And I was like, whoa, because that kind of flippant comment is an identity level accusation. You know, to
Perfect.
call me a liar when one of my values, core values, is authenticity, was like, whoa. And it didn't hurt because I know it was a reflection on you, not a reflection on me. All I wanted to say was, no, Bill. No. You've got the wrong end of the stick here. You know, you can say, I'm not comfortable accepting the compliment, which is basically how it read to me.
Yes,
But however you
that.
want to frame it in your head, please don't call me a liar because
There
I'm
you
not.
go. And in discussion, because we are different, we see things differently.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, you because also we built the relationship. You understood what I was saying is you're giving me a compliment, and I can't take that. When I said you're lying,
Yeah.
it was me saying,
Yeah, I got that loud and clear.
yeah, I couldn't take the compliment, and so, but I didn't understand the effect
Yeah.
that using certain words can literally shift the communication.
hmm
So
And that is so insightful, Bill.
in this moment, I want people to recognize the healing in being honest and authentic and telling each other the truth. Because we just did a breakthrough on a conversation we had 10 seconds earlier.
Yeah.
And when she said it, I was very, very proud of the. Not that it matters. I mean, you're a powerhouse, powerhouse superstar. Um,
Yes, it says it in the song. You've got to believe
it,
it if it's in a song.
yeah, you did. But in okay, so Gina, I totally lost where I was going. So
Okay, so let's go
next.
back to this because we were talking about words and the power of words and the impact that they have. And I think we've got some beautiful comments here. Like Leslie talks about it's practicing the process consistently because we were talking about public speaking and practicing
Mhm.
that. But I think there's an element of practicing the process of honesty and being brutal. Well, not, I don't know. Brutal is one of those tricky words. Brutal honesty has a negative connotation. And because words have power, we need to be careful about what we mean when we say words and what other people think we're saying. Now, I came across a statistic recently, which was absolutely fascinating. And it said that in corporate contexts, if you're speaking to people, 75% of them don't understand, don't hear, or have tuned out to what you're saying. 75%. I nearly fell off my chair. So I did what I do and I went digging through it and trying to find the original source. And I managed to find a book which was released, 20 years ago, which was referenced multiple times in academic article after academic article. So I have no doubt that the stat is in there, but I haven't actually been able to go back to the book because it's like $144 for a book that's been out of print for 20
Yeah.
years. Okay, I'd love this book, but I'm not sure that I need it right now. Anyway, the point is that stat is absolutely fascinating because it makes me, it puts into statistics what I feel in my gut, which is it doesn't matter what comes out of our mouths. It's what comes into the other person's ears.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look at this from a communication model perspective. And some of the oldest models of communication, the Wilbur Schramm model of communication, for those of you who studied journalism, is basically the idea that you have a sender that sends a message and you have a receiver that receives a message, and there's the message is in the middle. Like theoretically, what you put out as the sender is what the receiver receives, but it doesn't work like that because there is this weird thing that happens in between called noise.
Mm-hmm.
And noise disrupts message. Now, any of you know that if we get a glitch in the airwaves and we can't hear each other, or if sound is turned off or cameras are turned off, that limits, it creates noise, even if it's not physical noise. But what we forget is it's about the noise that happens in our heads. And we cannot anticipate what's going to be happening in someone else's head. And so when we were prepping, Bill came up with this gorgeous question of, when you walk into a coaching session, what are you listening for before the client even realizes what they're saying? And what I'm listening for is the potential noise points. So on the day that Bill and I had that conversation, which led to this incredible revelation, which I want to come back to because this is huge, Bill, huge. What I heard on that day was his voice was down.
Yeah.
His body language was slumped. His eyes were slightly closed.
I think you
And
asked me, has anyone ever seen me like this before?
yes, I
And
did.
and I went back and I was like, what did I look? We didn't record it. It wasn't alive. So it was a bad day for whatever
And let's be
reason.
clear, we all have bad days.
I
Like
mean,
even
no,
the best of
it
us.
was because
Yeah.
of what we were talking about earlier, meaning I was not inebriated, but I was in that fog. I was in that fog and I was ready to get out of it.
There was a lovely comment from someone saying, do you have a tip for staying motivated when feeling stuck? And the honest answer to that is that there's levels of stuck. so yeah, you can't just have one tip for each, level of the stuckness. What I can say is that getting outside, no matter what the weather is, almost always a good way of breaking that cycle of stuckness. So obviously it's summer, well, spring, summer where I am, it's autumn coming into winter where you are. And no matter what the weather is outside, my father always used to say, there's no such thing as bad weather. There's only inappropriate clothing.
There you go.
So if it's raining buckets outside, just get outside with a really good umbrella. Like yesterday, I was down at a dam and I had this giant umbrella up with me and it was raining buckets, but it didn't matter. And in fact, that feeling of actually being outside, watching the droplets of rain on the water, holding the umbrella above my head, it was such an amazing experience. How often do we get to really feel the world around us? And so the tip for staying motivated or getting moving when feeling stuck is literally to get moving, to get off your butt and get out of the house. And it doesn't have to be a momentous occasion, doesn't even need to be going somewhere special. You don't even need to be going for anything. It's just literally that change of scenery that can actually help you shift the perspective in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good segue into some other things that are going on. So first, I have been getting out more, and one of the things that I'm struggling with today is, well, I'm not struggling with it today. I was struggling with it a couple of days ago. When you're not working and you're keeping yourself motivated, there's only so much you can do around the house. So getting out of the house is one thing, right? But then once you do it, it's that desire to come home and take a nap or Netflix and chill, or get on, write that book, start putting yourself out there, start networking, start doing more lives, I will say this. I'm doing a collaboration and I'm so excited because the person I'm collaborating with is inspiring me. And it's kind of cool to like share stuff with someone else and say, okay, so we're going to do this, right? So what do you think about this? And it was very interesting from speaking with you. you asked, how do I see myself? I believe that was a question that you had versus how other people see me. And it's interesting that we don't realize our magnificence. You don't realize your magnificence. You don't realize that you were there for me in a moment when I needed you. And you said something to me that was so bold. Like, look at you. You look like hell. What are you doing? That it shifted. And I needed that. And I believe that the universe puts people in your path in the right moment at that right space. That's all I have.
There's an element of timing, I think, that we should address here, Bill. And firstly, thank you. You know, it's so easy to dismiss compliments, but actually the greatest gift you can give someone is to really, truly accept a compliment and to recognize that while some of the stuff that they say to you may feel uncomfortable, that they took the time and effort to express what they believe in their hearts of hearts. And I have to assume that people are telling the truth because I live in that world where I believe that people say the truth. It's not always the case, sadly. Some societies and cultures are really good at not saying the truth, but that's my preference. That's my assumption. So you said that you felt like I was asking the right questions, that I'd given you the space to be able to be yourself, to evolve in that moment. And this is the timing element that is so important. I have a friend who is in educational leadership, and she has a huge amount on her plate. She's often overwhelmed. There's people wanting her to do things, to set initiatives in place, to make things happen. And she would get very frustrated that she felt like she couldn't get around to doing everything. But here's the interesting thing. She didn't realize she has a superpower. Her superpower is the right timing. And she actually knows deep in her heart of hearts when that initiative will work and when it won't work. And she can actually use that superpower to decide when to take an initiative on, when to take an action, and when to delegate it or when to just let it lie. It's very frustrating for the person who is on the other end of that. But it is a superpower that my friend hadn't recognized, because she just got really angry with herself for not being able to tell people why now was not the right time, because she was receiving information that she didn't know she was receiving that could tell her now is not the right time. But she couldn't articulate that to the people in her team. How do you explain a feeling other than you've done it often enough and you know that this is going to work or not going to work? Until I stopped her and I said, wait, hang on a second. This is not a weakness. This is a strength. And that reframe helped her go, whoa. When she went into her next job, she actually started identifying that this is a strength, and then started looking, my body is absorbing all this information. We have 5 senses. Some believe we have more. She was able to identify, start looking at what was it that made her think now is not the right time. And then she was starting to be able to help others in her world know, no, now is not the right time. And that's partly what happened with me and Bill. In that moment when Bill said, I want to move, and I didn't know he was going through this epic journey behind the scenes, all I could identify was that in that moment, something was happening that meant he wasn't fully present. And I wanted to give him the grace that he could identify the right timing for him.
Yep. It was excellent. Anyway, wonderful. Simply wonderful. So let's talk about you and how do people reach you, and why do you do what you do? And do you know that you and Sigrid are both in Toastmasters? She talked
I
about it
did
last
not.
week.
No, I
Yeah.
did not. But I'm not in Toastmasters, just to be clear. I just did a guest episode, so to speak. I mean, it was live. It was in live. It wasn't an episode. But yes, no, I was invited to speak at a Toastmasters group down the road from me. But it's been many, many, many years since I did the Toastmasters thing.
Have you done TEDx? TED
Yes, I
Talk?
did a TEDx speech a few years ago. Why do you ask?
Because I've always wondered, how do people get selected for that, and how do you do it, and what?
Oh, that's right, Bill. So we got 3 questions here. Which one do you want me to answer?
Answer the last one first. How did you get selected?
Okay, so the TEDx, just to be clear, is an offshoot of the whole big thing, TED. So if you've seen a TED talk and someone's done a TED talk, that's a big, huge deal. Usually people are already at the top of their game before they'd be invited to do a TED talk. And then TED did the spin-off called TEDx. And TEDx is an independently organized TED event. So theoretically, almost anyone can run a TEDx event. There are very stringent requirements because they want to keep up the standards. It's as complex as even knowing that you have to have a red circle on the stage of a certain size.
Got it.
So you got to dot the I's and you got to cross the T's. And there's 2 ways of looking at this. The one is, how do you get a traditional TEDx talk? And then how did Gina get her TEDx talk?
Okay.
So nowadays, TEDx events are highly sought after, often very well attended. Just to be clear, it's a non-profit, so no one's making money off of this. And that's an interesting point, actually, because theoretically, the coaches who are coaching people to do TEDx events don't make money off of it either. You're not allowed to, according to the terms and conditions of TEDx. But what will happen is, because the organizers often have far more demand for speakers than they can accept, is they often go through very rigorous processes to choose. Now, the idea behind TEDx is ideas worth spreading. So you have to be able to have an idea that is timely. It has to be different to all of the other stuff out there. You have to be potentially a good enough speaker, because you'll get training as part of that. You don't have to be a magnificent speaker in the first place. And you also need to be able to touch something in some people, make people think differently. And so when you're collating a TEDx event, you've got to be able to think about all of the different elements of it. So it may be that you have 2 people talking about power, for example. And if your theme is power, then all of your speakers are going to be talking about power in one shape or another. But if your theme is not power, you might find that they're both magnificent speakers with incredibly powerful messages to share, but you can't have both of them. So how do you get to do a TEDx talk? Honestly, there is an element of discipline, of rigor, of going through the processes of whatever organization has. And then there is also an element of luck. And I don't think that that is something that TEDx wannabe speakers really acknowledge. And so if you desperately, desperately, desperately want to be a TEDx speaker, go and find every single event around you. Go make friends with the people in your context. Go identify what they're talking about, who they're thinking about, and just be part of that community. But if you want to do it all over the world, amplify it. Apply to every single person you can possibly think of that you want to get that message, because of the luck element. There was a South African golfer called Gary Player, who was an excellent guy in his day. And he used to say, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Ha! No, practice me. Perfect, right?
So that's part 1 of the story. That's how do you get a TEDx talk? And the answer is, you look for them, you look for your theme, you identify what their requirements are. You got to follow the processes. Like sometimes you have to do a written submission, and then you have to do a pre-recorded submission, and then you have to do a live interview with people, and then they select you before the actual rehearsal process begins. And trust me, there's a lot of rehearsal to get you in to actually speak on the stage, on the event, on the day. Okay.
So
Part.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you.
So part 2 of the story is, how did I do a TEDx talk? Now, Bill, you can have the kind of motivations behind why I decided to do the TEDx talk in the first place, or we can slip straight into the hows. Which would you prefer?
Which is more interesting?
It's more interesting to find out the motivations.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I have been on stage since I was tiny, and I'm not very big in the first place, but I mean, since I was young. My mum used to say, she'd tell a story of me at the zoo as a child, and there was this platform, and then there were like steps down below, and then there were people sitting having tea on below the steps. So it was almost like a theater. If you think about it, you got your raised dais, and then you got the audience below you. And I could barely walk, and I toddled out into the middle of the stage. I looked at the audience and I opened my arms. So yeah, I've been a performer
All your life?
I was knee high to a grasshopper. So that speaking extended, I was a ballerina, so I knew how to perform on stage in terms of non-verbally, how to get a message across without saying a single word, which is possibly why I have such an intimate sense of body language and how body language reflects your message or conflicts with your message. And then later in life, I did professional speaking at high school and won awards for that. And then later I joined Toastmasters for a little bit. And then I did impromptu speeches and I did professional speaking. And then I would always speak in professional contexts. And then I was a marketing director speaking on behalf of the organization. And at some point in time, I was working for an organization where I was helping salespeople understand our customer marketing messages, because this is still my heart of hearts. This is still something I do behind the scenes, actually.
Right.
I tell customer stories, and I help people identify their customer stories and use them across their entire marketing sphere. So that's why I've got so many letters after my name. They're all marketing related.
I did not know that. There you
Yeah.
go.
So FCIM is a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. FAMI is a fellow of the Australian Marketing Institute. CPM is a certified practicing marketer in Australia. And CMKTR is Chartered Marketer, which is the highest level of marketer professionalism you can get according to the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK. So that's what my postnominals stand for. So you can imagine my surprise when I am presenting to a group of very interested salespeople, telling them about the stories in our organization that I know they're going to use, because there's nothing more powerful than telling the actual story of a customer who loves you and why they love you and how your product or service made a difference in their lives. And got some feedback from my boss afterwards. Now, this was in the day when we were just starting to do streaming. I think we hadn't video streaming yet. We just had audio streaming. And so she dialed in to the meeting, and she only dialed in halfway through. And she and a colleague of ours were off-site having a meeting with each other. And I asked her afterwards, how did it go? She was so dismissive of my performance. She was like, yeah, no, you didn't really get to the point. I didn't know what you were talking about. You didn't nail the message. It was a bit vague. I nearly fell off my chair. And I went to another person who had been in that room at the time. She was actually in charge of the MDR's market development rep. So the people who sit on the phone and make those calls to begin the sales journey. And I said to her, this is the feedback I got. Is that what you saw? Because you were in the room when it happened. She said, no, that's not what I saw at all. I realized my boss had dialed in halfway through the conversation.
Okay.
But it hurt, Bill. It really, really hurt. Because, when you suspect something, you think you're good, right? Because you've got a lot of practice, a lot of experience, but do you know that you're good? And then when someone tells you something that is the opposite from what you're saying, and I know this will resonate with anyone who is struggling to find work at the moment, you're good. You don't just have the wisdom, you don't just have the experience, you don't just have the notches on your bedpost. You know in your head and your heart and your gut that you can do this. And when someone says to you, no, you can't, or no, you didn't, that's like brain exploding. Like, see that little emoji with the brain exploding? That's what it feels like. And so in that moment, I hadn't realized, but I'd set the seeds for applying for a TEDx talk. And she actually said to me when I left the organization, would you like to borrow a book on TEDx to improve your speaking, because with the best will in the world, I don't think she meant to diss me. I don't think she meant to say you were a poor speaker. She wanted to help me improve. So I borrowed her Talk Like TED book by
You
Carmen
did.
Gallo. It's worth a read if you're interested. I didn't learn that much from it, but it was still worth reading.
Okay.
And then when I realized this is a gut level need. I need to try and figure out, can I do this TEDx thing? And so I researched the difference between TED and TEDx and discovered this TEDx thing. And then I discovered that there were dozens around me. I was living in the UK in Reading at the time. And I realized there was one in Reading. It was happening in a few months. Reading was 8 miles away from me. It's like practically in my backyard. I would, drive there several times a week. And so I reached out. Now, what I said to you before about TEDx is that it can be an incredibly long, complicated process. There can be 1,500 people applying for 5 slots. I don't know that for sure, I'm guessing, but it might just be 20 people applying for 5 slots. But there's a process, a reduction process to identify the right speaker. And this is where I always feel like a bit of a cheat, an imposter, when I explain how I did a TEDx talk, because I went, all right, these are all the ones. Here's one near me. Here's the guy who runs this. I'm going to reach out to him on LinkedIn and say, hey, have you got all the speakers you need for your event? And his answer was, we have a lot of speakers. We could be open to more. Why? What are you thinking about? And so we had a little bit of a chat via LinkedIn. And he said, well, if you want to submit, something to me, feel free. And I sat down that evening and I wrote the speech in full. I think it was 8 pages. And the speech was, why now is the best time in history to be in marketing.
What year was that?
That would have been 2017.
That answers my question. Go ahead. My question was, marketing has shifted so much.
It has.
So
And
understanding
that was the
what
beginning of
year
the
you're
shift.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what was happening there is we had social media. I mean, we'd already seen like how Twitter could change the world. We saw the Arab Spring uprising, which was largely orchestrated through Twitter. We'd started seeing already the fact that people were reporting earthquakes on Twitter before they became available to the mainstream news media. And what was also happening simultaneously is organizations like HubSpot were creating a marketing ecosystem that made marketing measurable as well. And we'd already had the upswelling of inbound marketing, which is where instead of you pushing your messages out to people, you make the messages available and then people come to you because they like what you're saying. So this was why now is the best time in history to be marketing. But my point was that it's because you can actually connect emotionally with people. You don't have to just keep shouting and shouting and shouting. You can actually be authentic. And so I sent him this 8-page document and said, what do you think? And he said, you're in. And it was as simple as that, Bill, as simple as that.
But you know what? I bet you that happens more regularly than you think. And the reason why I say that, because just in my world, you're always looking for people that want to come on and talk. And you always get those last minute, like, yeah, I said yes, but I'm not feeling it today. And giving a public speech. I mean, if you're not feeling it in that moment, you can take the whole thing down. So can anyone give a TEDx, in your opinion?
In my opinion, anyone who is passionate enough about a subject can. And it doesn't matter what your subject is. If you are a plumber and you're really excited about this new technology that you've developed, you can give a TEDx talk. I remember as a marketer attending an event where they made plumbing sexy again because they were talking about using copper pipes. And so they did a competition to see who could make the most interesting artwork out of copper pipes.
Nice.
And they did. And a guy, won the competition because he'd made a heart-shaped copper pipe for his girlfriend. Nice. So yes, he could have done a TEDx talk. But just to say that anyone can doesn't mean that anyone should, and doesn't mean that there aren't massive barriers for some people to overcome. If you are fundamentally uncomfortable standing in front of other people, then doing a TEDx talk is probably not something that you'd want to do. You'd have to be able to overcome that psychological barrier to feel comfortable enough to do it. But also, if you are the kind of person who is pathologically afraid of being on stage, and then your journey to becoming a TEDx speaker is going to be much, much, much harder. And if you have a voice that is very monotonous, the chances are that no one's going to ask you to do a TEDx talk. Doesn't
So
mean that you can't do it.
is that how you think I sound?
Not at all, Bill. Not at all.
I would love to do it. I would love to do it because I'm afraid. And
Yeah.
and I like doing what scares me the most. And even in that moment where I bomb, I have my takeaways. And I always want to do better. And I think I'm not a perfectionist. I think you and I talked about that. You know, I'm not a perfectionist, but I always think things can be better.
Yeah, I think that is a very big difference. You're talking about a growth or a fixed mindset there, Bill. And people who have a fixed mindset, it means that I am the way I am. I can't change. Whatever happens around me is meant to happen around me, but it's going to be the way it's going to be. Whereas people with a growth mindset have the idea that just because I am like this now doesn't mean I have to be like this forever.
Yeah.
Or maybe I would amend my statement where you asked, can anyone do a TEDx talk? Maybe I would say that people who aren't naturally good and who have a fixed mindset and are not open to growth probably couldn't do a TEDx talk.
Okay. I can accept that. You would have to want to do it. You would have to be open to change, and you'd have to be that person that wants to try something different and isn't afraid
Yeah.
to look stupid. Like I opened up a show today, and there was no one on stage, and I've stopped drinking. So there's no excuse.
To be fair, it's Sunday night where you are, so if people have a drink in their hand, I don't blame them. But is that a nice segue to come back into your big revelation from earlier today, Bill?
I don't know if it's a big revelation. Let's talk to Leslie. Fine, Les.
All right, fine. Nice.
Mrs. Flowers,
Quick
how are
switch
you?
of, yes, all right, Bill. We're clearly not meant to talk about this right now, which is interesting because this is
Go
a
ahead.
coaching
No, we
moment,
can.
right?
We can.
This is a coaching moment because
Go.
if part of the pressure of timing is knowing when people are able to accept the information that you're giving them and therefore when to give them that information. So we talked about brutal honesty. Now, brutal honesty means that saying something that you think may not be comfortable for the person who's listening to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what makes it brutal. You really have to be in the right mindset to even admit that what someone else is saying is true. That's what makes it brutal. And often the coach's role is to find when people are receptive to that. So I've been coaching a CEO in Europe for 4 or 5 months now. And he is a great guy, but nothing was going in, nothing. We were having joint sessions with his COO, and we'd be talking, and his COO would make changes, and his COO's performance went from here, he's already good, to here. Sometimes he's gone up to here, and then occasionally he'll drop down to here. But the CEO was consistently just above average. And he dropped down a couple of times, but he wasn't ready to change yet. Until we had the session where I sat down with him and I said, what's going on? Because your body language is not right. You've lost your sparkle. I can't see this. And quite frankly, you got some big gigs coming up and we need you on your A game. What's happening? But I had to wait. I had to wait until he was ready to hear that. I had to wait until we were in a context where it was just us, not his team member, and where I could be brutally honest. It took a long time for him to realize that he had to change his behavior, and he did.
Good. Good. Why are people so resistant or so afraid to say, I need help, or this is what I'm going through? And before you answer, I'm going to say, when I was about 7 years old, 8, my grandmother used to watch her stories, and they would come on at 12 and they'd end at 3. And I would sit there because we'd have to be quiet, right? All like sleep on a blanket. That was our nap time. And I would think to myself, as an 8-year-old, if they just told the truth, this entire story would already be over. like, like the entire storyline is hiding a secret. Like, let it out. And it's funny because of that is why I'm so able at times to say, this is me. When, and there's certain things you are not allowed to reveal. But when I'm ready, right? This is me.
Why?
And that's the
Why?
power of the
You know,
tongue.
as you were saying that, the image that came to mind is actually the myth of Pandora's box. Are you familiar with it?
Absolutely. Once it's open.
Well, I'll share this with the rest of the audience just in case there's anyone who doesn't know their Greek mythology very well. Pandora was a person who heard scratching inside this box, and she was told, do not open the box, do not open the box, do not open the box. And, you know, temptation being what it is, she opened the box, and all of the troubles of the world flew out of this box. And this was kind of the Greek origin of evil, is that all of these things flew out. And the way I heard the story, which is interesting, because I kind of munged my brain to accept the positive version of the story, which is not, in fact, the way the Greek myth was told. In the Greek myth, she then heard more scratchings on the roof, and because she knew she'd let out all the troubles of the world, she never let out the next scratching in the box.
And it was the
And
same.
in my mind, she did let out the scratching in the box, because the scratching in the box was hope. And so the point was, what do you let out? You let out all the troubles of the world, but you're too afraid to let hope out
In,
of that box.
out, or in.
Well, out of the box of emotions, you know, because the point is, if in our lives we are trained that we must be strong and we must be competent, we must be capable, we must behave like responsible adults, we must, especially if we're a parent, then we have the need to be always on. We have the need to show our kids that we are capable. Well, where does vulnerability sit within that? Now, in the last few years, and I think post-COVID, it really ramped up, people finally had the ability to say, I'm not okay. But that message, it's okay to not be okay, is still sinking in a lot of contexts, especially where image is so important, where the need to appear powerful and strong and in control is so important. And let's face it, we possibly feel that all of these things, these evils in the world, are of our own making. Maybe we feel like we let them out of the box and we don't have the right, we don't have the ability to accept the help, because the funny thing is that help is hard to accept.
And we're going to end it right there. We're going to end it there because help is hard to accept, ladies and gentlemen. That's something else that I'm struggling with. I don't know how to accept compliments. I don't know how to accept help. It feels weird, and all of us need to do it. However, I know for a fact that Gina's alarm has already gone off, letting her know that she has a 30-minute window, and we are on borrowed time. So what I'd like to do is to tell everyone that you will be back, and we will talk about what was that last statement? Keep me on track.
Hope and accepting help, and how
accepting
important it is to
accepting help, because that is a growth area that I need to work on. So 2026, right now
Totally.
we're closing down for the year. So we will see you back in 2026. I would like you to close out with what you want people to take away from this conversation. And I shall let you leave, and I'll close out the show by myself.
I'd like to start with that butterfly of hope. It can exist, and it requires one's head to turn the right way. It is easy to turn towards despair. It is easy to find ways to self-defeat. It's easy to sit on that couch and binge watch those Netflix episodes. It is easy to not do the exercise and to not reach out to the friend and to not ask for help. It's hard to be brave, and being brave means being willing to accept that we are not perfect, but also being willing to accept that we don't have to do it on our own.
Yeah.
You are not alone. You are never alone. And how do you reach out to me? You reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if you can't get access to me via LinkedIn, you reach out to me via my website, verbalistics.com.au. That's 2 L's, Verbalistics. And if you can't reach out to me via there, find me on any social media platform or via Bill and say hello, because you are not alone. You are never alone. And if you don't want to reach out to me and you don't want to reach out to a friend, trust me, there are places and people online who do help, who will help. But they can't help you unless you say, I need help. That's the first step. That's the bravery.
Yeah, absolutely. Gina Ballarin, I love you. Thank you so much for coming on again. You have a great evening. Enjoy your meeting. Say hi to your husband. And hope that ankle mends. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
So one of the things that you can go, poof. I'll kick you off. Hold on, let me see. Oh, she kicked herself off. So one of the things that's very important to me is that we connect on a level that's not about selling something to each other or about what I need from you or what you need from me. I want to start conversations that lead towards healing or that lead towards a better understanding. So you may not understand me. I may not understand you. But if we start connecting, we'll have a better understanding of each other. So with that said, I am going to let everyone go, but do not miss next Sunday's show. If you do, that'll be crazy because I'm excited and I never get excited. I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control. I think I like it. Ah, man. Okay. Bye. Love you guys.
makes sense. Scott Jackson, OZB, all of his intense. We clap, we stomp, we move in time. This family groove is yours and mine. Bill Scott, Debbie, CJ, Devin, Lisa, Jimmy, Billy, Jack, Big Phil, bring the heat up. Justin, Sundry, Ryan, Olivia, Charles, Brooke, family show.
This is not a setup for CJ. So let's start.
Say it loud, say it free. Oh, yeah. We are family. Locked in the beat, cause it's tough. Hard couldn't it be? We are all from the shadows to the starlight, now we shine so bright. The groove is electric, it's because it's night. Name by name, heart by heart. Together forever, we'll never part. Curse road, Jimmy grooves. We all move. Scott Jackson, OZB. Dance with me, set us free. We are Scott. We are Jackson. Jackson. We are OZB. Clap your feet. This family's fire can't be beat. We are OZB. Don't coming out. Don't coming out. Don't coming out. Don't coming out. Don't coming out.
I would say I'm not. I'm like,
He said he's booked and busy.
I'm booked and
He's not available.
no, I'm working trying to get my money out.
You're so
Before I